Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. AMC Stock is up 5.5% at the time of recording this video. It could be higher by the time you guys are seeing this video, or it could be ultimately lower. There's a lot of volatility with AMC Stock. I want to talk about the potential of a gamma squeeze even coming into tomorrow. Lots of option activity just outside of the money that could move AMC Stock big time. Kind of like what we even seen maybe not last Friday, but leading into Friday, you've seen quite the move higher, really all of the entirety of last week. And really that Friday before, you had seen an 11.5% move, kind of based on the same setup as we're seeing this week. Let's go ahead and get into all of this information. We're going to give you guys an update on this Israel situation, as well as Jerome Powell. What Jerome Powell just said is strange. So let's go ahead and give you guys the latest. Make sure you're caught up to speed with this entire situation. Hit the like button as well as subscribe to the channel if you guys would like to come trade with us live in real time. Link down below in the description of this video as well. Now, that is neither here or there. Let's get into what in the world is going on with Jerome Powell. First things first, it's strange. Jerome Powell had a protest break out right before he was supposed to speak. People were shouting, stop fossil fuel finance, Jerome, or something along those lines. Very strange. We have not seen that since like the Volcker days. He was escorted out of the room, and then once the protesters were gone, he was brought back into the room and able to actually give his speech and answer some questions. Markets reacted very negatively to this, bounced back, and are selling off again. It's really sold off into the close. TLT, that's the big story. The bond yields shot higher as Jerome Powell was making these statements. A couple different statements. Some of them were good for the markets. Some of them were not so good for the markets. Now, Jerome Powell says there are many signs the labor market is getting back into balance. He then said higher bond yields is a tightening, and at margin could reduce the need for Fed tightening. Those were a little bit more on the bullish sides. He does say the business contacts are saying the economy remains strong. Overseas treasury buying has remained robust, saying a lot of other people are buying our bonds. Says the current fiscal situation does not affect the Fed's near-term policy changes. Says we know the fiscal path is ultimately unsustainable. Yeah, no questioning that. Says the focus on deficits, QT, could be a part of the yield rise. Think about it like this. The government 20 years ago, if you were looking at the government's balance sheet, was a lot better than it is today. The government was spending, not as much as they were bringing in. Today, the government just deficit spends all they want. The government spends like they're drunk. The Fed, over the last 20 years or so, has been buying the bonds, keeping rates low in some capacity or another. Now that the Fed is no longer buying bonds, yield is based off of risk. So if you have a 10% yielding dividend stock, they're not yielding 10% to you because they want to be generous. They're yielding 10% because the markets don't want what that company has to offer. So when you think about it in terms of treasuries, if there is no Fed buying the bonds, well, it's up to the marketplace to determine what kind of risk premium should be on bonds. And it's clear over the past couple of days and weeks, there should be a higher risk premium. There should be a higher, cost of capital. The government is riskier now than it was before. Look at government, shutdowns and almost government default. Obviously, the government's riskier now. So, not so great. Jerome Powell says bond yields rise doesn't seem to be about expectations of the Fed doing more on rates. Basically saying exactly what I just said to you. Markets may be responding to deficits and Fed balance sheet actions. Again, what I just said. Said markets are seeing economic resilience and revising their views. There was one, right here. This is not so good. Jerome Powell says right now the risk is still high inflation. With the hindsight, it is possible the Fed could have done less during the pandemic. He says it's possible we are going into a more inflationary period, but it's hard to know. That's one that really caused the markets to sell off. If we go into a high inflation period, or just the economy has fundamentally changed, rates are not going down to the degree that the markets hope they will. Not great. Fed Jerome Powell also said it does not feel like policy is too tight, saying they could raise again. We're not too restrictive right now. Yeah, that is definitely problemsome. It says, by any reckoning, neutral rates ebbed over recent decades, and I'm unsure where it is now. They're like, they don't even know if they're at neutral. Like, you're not even at neutral. You're at 5.5%, bro. Come on. The markets did not like that. So the markets sold off big time. The markets rose higher, and now the markets are selling off into the close. Fed Jerome Powell says, I don't know where monetary policy will settle. I've said this over and over again before here on the channel, and hopefully if there's one thing you guys have ever learned from this channel, it's this. The markets can handle bad news. They can't handle uncertainty. So what you got today from Powell was a lot of uncertainty. That is not great. Now, we did get some more kind of news and updates with this whole Israel conflict, really the whole Middle East conflict. This says drone attacks a U.S. military base in southern Syria. That's not a good headline. And there's quite a few other headlines that are also not very positive as well. If you take a look at OSINT Defender, they do a really good job of keeping you up to date with this situation. It says Israel's economic minister Nur Baka has said that civilian casualties and hostage rescue missions in the Gaza Strip will only come second to the deconstruction of Hamas once the ground operation begins. So take out Hamas any means necessary. More rocket launches are now headed towards Tel Aviv. The Israel military has a green light to move into Gaza whenever it's ready, a member of the country's security cabinet told ABC News. Yeah, that's apparently what Biden gave them. It says Air Force arrived earlier today in Tel Aviv, Israel, to deliver at least 4 MDT David Light armored vehicles in order to replace the equipment which has so far been lost during the war against Hamas. Says European intelligence officials have stated that they so far have only seen evidence which suggests the 10 to 15 Palestinians were killed by the explosion at the Al-Ahad Arab Baptist hospital in northern Gaza, not the 500 to 800 which was being claimed by the Palestinian authorities. The defense minister of Israel stated today during a speech to IDF soldiers near the Gaza Strip, "You are now seeing Gaza from afar. Soon you will see it from the inside. The order will soon come." That's exactly it. Once that order is given and troops do go into Gaza, that's when Hamas, Hezbollah, that's when Iran, that's when Syria, that's when Lebanon, just all of these other guys are gonna potentially have a problem with this situation. That's where things could really escalate from there. And the defense minister stated something similar during a speech with another group of Israeli soldiers today. He says, along the southern front, "Stay ready, the order will soon be issued." And then it says, Israel has reportedly begun the process of evacuating a number of its embassies and consulates across the Middle East as well as northern Africa, with diplomats claimed to depart from Jordan, Turkey, and Morocco. I don't really think it's a question of if it's going to happen. It's more of a question of when it is going to happen. So when it does happen, that's where the situation could really be escalated. Okay. And it looks like the U.S. is sending 2 more of these Iron Dome things to Israel. And just overall, guys, I wish I didn't have to report on this. But again, the Strait of Hormuz controls about 20 to 30% of the shipment of oil in the world every single day. if this situation does get worse, well, it's pretty clear that, you know, come on, that's the first thing they're going to do to try to hurt, you know, America, or try to hurt other countries, essentially, right, that have any involvement with this situation. They're going to cut off the flow of oil. That's what they're going to do. They're still going to be able to sell it on the global stage at much higher prices, so they're not even really going to be hurt, these guys in this region. But the rest of the world, it would be a financial catastrophe for the U.S. And that's why this specific conflict has the potential to affect the markets, you know, 20, 30, 40%, give us some really big downside if this situation does get worse. So I want to be very clear on that. That's why I am keeping you up to date with this situation. I hate this situation. I hate that I have to report on this, but I feel like I would be doing you an injustice if I just avoided this and then one day, boom, shit hits the fan, markets fall 20, 30, 40%, and everyone's confused on exactly why. If you're a viewer of this channel, you will not be confused. It all has to do with oil, as well as fear of a larger conflict. Obviously, that would not be great as well, and that would be probably half the reason why the markets would fall at that point. So it's really just a matter of time. Again, it's not really a question of if, but more so when, and that's when this conflict could spread. Iran, Hezbollah, all of those guys, they have a lot of, you know, missiles that could overwhelm the Iron Dome. That could put Israel in a really bad spot. That could put us in even a worse spot. Speaking from us, I guess the international community, but specifically the U.S. So there is that. Now let's talk about AMC stock more directly. There's no news today. AMC is just doing what AMC does. You have a short score of 58, $140 million worth of short positions on AMC stock. 7.71% estimated short interest of free float. Free float out on loan at 11.03%. Shares out on loan 21.81 million. Days to cover 1.18. Cost to borrow 1.57. Utilization of 49.78. So the number's really not moving around all too much here today. Cost to borrow max still at about 9%. Cost to borrow average 1.25%. Cost to borrow minimum at about 1%. You take a look at the option activity. You got a positive order value of 75%. 6 orders totaling $233,000. I like to look at the specific option analysis over here on Webull to get a better picture of what's going on, because those options only incorporate hedge funds and institutions with large, you know, flows. They're categorized as unusual option trades. This captures all of them. So total call volume of about 98,000 today. Put volume at about 58,000. So there's a lot more calls being placed today on AMC stock than puts. And a lot of people are getting in on those at the ask or above. About 60% of all of the calls bought today were purchased more than the asking price, right? So, or right on the asking price, or above, 40,000 of which were at the bid or below. So overall, pretty dang bullish, you know, day for AMC stock. AMC stock is now at 4% as the markets have slid into the end of the day. We still do have like a half an hour left of the trading day as well. I like to try to get these videos out at 4 p.m. so I have to start making them around 3, you know, around 3:30 or so. So things could obviously change. The markets don't look too pretty as of right now. Let's just say that. But if you take a look at the option activity expiring by tomorrow, first let's start with the Stonko tracker data just to get a feel of the overall number here, because I do think that's important, but I think it's more important, you know, what the close to the money strikes do look like, because it's unrealistic to expect like a $10 move coming tomorrow regardless, but it is possible to get a big move. So if you take a look at tomorrow, you got about 41,000 calls in the money, 160,000 calls out the money, puts in the money 16,700, puts out the money 112,000. So some of what could be causing this bullish move with AMC stock today is the 41,000 calls that are already in the money. A lot of these have to be hedged for. Some of that hedging is going to happen now. Some of that hedging is going to happen coming tomorrow. Now, given these options expire tomorrow, if you do see them go into the money, then you see basically instantaneous hedging. So at the 950 call, you're 1 cent away from that right now. You for the most part of the day have been above 950, but you got about 9,200 calls that are there for open interest. At the $10 call, you have 16,488. At the 1050, you have about 11,000. At the 11, you have almost 16,000. At the 1150, you have 5,500. And at the $12 strike, you have 14,000. So it does not look unrealistic to me that you could see a $2-3 move coming tomorrow or even by the start of next week. That would also be a realistic possibility to me, just based on this extreme amount of option activity. You guys got to remember, this is huge option activity relative to the outstanding float that we have. I believe it's like 100 million, give or take 150 million, something like that. These option orders are like 3%, 4-5% of the float if they were to go into the money. This is 1.6 million shares right here. 1.1 million shares, 1.5 million shares, 500,000 shares, 1.4 million shares. All of these, if they did go into the money, it's like a snowball effect. Once some go into the money, then more can go into the money and then keep snowballing down from there. That's why a lot of the time on Friday, you will see those big moves. Not last Friday, but the Friday before that, you've seen over an 11% move on Friday, seemingly for no reason at all. I would argue it had to do mostly with the option activity. Now, if you take a look at AMC stock, you're above your longer term downtrending line of support. That is good news. This dates back all the way to 2022, back here in January of 2022. So that is a good sign. You definitely want to stay above that. That is at about $9 per share, $8.90 per share, roughly in that area. You want to get above the 8-day moving average next at $9.84. Once you get above that, $10 per share, $12 per share, they're going to be psychological levels of resistance. But really, your next major level of resistance is right here at about $14 per share. That is your 50-day moving average. It is coming down rapidly. So even if we don't break out above that, like tomorrow or even next week, the week after that, it's probably going to be around here at about $12 per share. Then once you break that, that's where you're going to see some even larger upside. No matter what, once you break above that 50-day moving average, the upside gets big at that point. Now, if you look the RSI, that is at 43.90, so you're far from overbought here with AMC stock. You're actually slightly oversold here. If you look at the MACD has been trending upwards for a while now, continuing to trend upwards, but definitely has slowed down here over the past couple of days or so. You're negative about 1 on the MACD, but today, by the end of the day, tomorrow, that's probably going to change and even break out into positive territory. When you do break to positive on the MACD, that's where things can get way more explosive to the upside. Now, just a broader look at what's going on out there. The dollar is down about 0.5%. USO oil is up about 1%. TLT down 1.4%, again with the rise in bond yields. KRE, the regional bank ETF, is up about 0.5%. And gold is up over 1%. The fear move in gold is actually crazy, guys. There is no fear move in bonds, but gold is breaking out to the highest level that you have seen since July of 2023, which I think gold can have a lot more room to rise from here, guys. So that is going to go ahead and do it for this video. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and source your comments, questions, or concerns down below in the comment section. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.